Hello, and welcome to Homegrown KC, a podcast dedicated to exploring Kansas City's fascinating history and sharing stories from a church past. I'm your host, Laura. Join me today as we explore a piece of Kansas City's history. Well, hello everyone, welcome back. It is now September. I know that I promised you this episode in August, so I'm off by a month. My apologies, and for my subscribers, I know that you've not received a newsletter in a month, but I had the summer off, so I didn't have anything to report. However, today, September 22nd, is the start of Banned Book Week here in the US, so this is actually the perfect time to release this particular episode, because this is Series 8, 2024, We the People. Topic 3, the Kansas City Public Library. Topic 1 was The Presidential Nominee Is, which was all about the 3 presidential national Republican and Democratic conventions that KC has hosted in its history. And topic 2 was The Life of Harry S. Truman. That's parts 1 through 4. Harry S. Truman, if you are unaware, was born and raised in Independence, Missouri, which is just a touch out of Kansas City, Missouri. We still count it. And those episodes covered his life minus his time in World War I and minus his time as president. If you're interested in either of those topics, you can go visit the Truman Library Museum in Independence, and they cover them very well. So I did end up doing an adventure minisode on the Truman Library, so if you're interested, please check out that episode. There are 2 motivators behind this particular episode. Number 1, books are awesome, and 2024 is Kansas City Public Library's 150th anniversary. Fantastic. 150 years. Number 2, social justice. Allow me to explain. The goal of this series has been to examine some of the social issues that we face today and how Kansas Cityans in the past have addressed those same issues. So if you're wondering what social issue we're going to examine through the lens of libraries, the answer is information. Knowledge is power. And right now, we are not only facing a war on information where we are constantly inundated by competing narratives, each composed of a series of quote-unquote compelling facts. And that's in quotations because sometimes these facts are often misinformation or disinformation. And they may be contain a kernel of truth, but oftentimes they're simply outright lies. However, we are also facing a war against access to knowledge. Example A, banned books. There is a long history of books being banned, not only in America, true, but very certainly here in America. And one of my goals this year has been to read banned books. Do you know the reason why most of these books have been banned? Because they include sexual acts, and often books that feature rape are banned. They include queer characters or themes related to the queer community, or they include violence or contain, quote, offensive language. Excuse me. And a lot of books that include mentions of slavery are banned. Here's a couple examples. So my friend and I just finished reading Maus 1 and Maus 2 by Artie Spielman, and I'm sorry if I said that incorrectly. We're now on Beloved by Toni Morrison, which this book is a Black author. Sorry, my throat is really dry. BIPOC authors should be more widely supported, so I'm happy that we're getting a chance to read this book. But Maus is the story of the author's parents, particularly his father's experience during Nazi occupation of Poland and his time at Auschwitz. Beloved is a fictional story of an enslaved Black woman and her life after enslavement, but this story was inspired by the true life story of Margaret Gardner, a formerly enslaved Black woman. Beloved has been banned from high schools multiple times for, quote, inappropriate topics of bestiality, racism, and sex, end quote. In Virginia in 2013, it was banned from senior English classes for, quote, the book includes scenes of violent sex, including gang rape, and was too graphic and extreme for teenagers, end quote. In 2022, Maus was banned from a school district in Tennessee for nudity. There is a single illustration of quote-unquote nudity, which is the author's mother naked in a bathtub after she committed suicide. And honestly, having read the book, I can say it is neither explicit nor graphic. Example B. Beginning on July 1st, 2024, the Donnelly Public Library in Donnelly, Idaho, will not allow anyone under the age of 18 to enter the library without a parent or signed waiver. Why this is bad? Libraries are wonderful things, and they have so much more to offer to the public than simply books, although I would never say a book is simply a book. They offer free Wi-Fi, they offer access to computers, visitors can access their email, apply for jobs or college, research, etc. Many offer classes or quiet spaces to study, multicultural events, help with taxes, even voting registration. All of this access and knowledge, I would argue, it's so important, right, to be able to access that no matter what your age. But I would also argue that perhaps the most important thing that libraries offer is simply a safe place for people of any age and for any reason. So, maybe your home life's not that good, and your school got out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What are you going to do? Go to the library. Be safe for a few more hours. Oh, wait. Sorry. You're under 18. Now you can't come. Right? This is stupid. I need to double check if they have reversed this decision or not, but I've not heard otherwise. So, censoring books, banning books, this means that young readers have difficulty, and I say difficulty instead of a complete disability because thanks to the internet and ebooks, they can still access these stories, but they have difficulty accessing these stories now. And these stories might contain characters that they can relate to and learn from, or they might contain descriptions of historical events that they should definitely learn about, aka slavery and the Holocaust. As for all the sex stuff, okay, you don't want your kid reading a bunch of spicy books. That's fair, but that doesn't give you a right to tell other children what they can and cannot read. That's up to their parents, okay? And if a book is mentioning rape, like for example, the book Speak, I don't know the author's name, has been banned a lot. I remember reading that when I was in middle school. I don't remember if that was 6th or 8th grade, one of the two. The main character was raped, and it's all about, her reaction after it. It's a really bad topic, of course, but it's still something that kids need to be exposed to so that they know how bad it is and why it's bad, and maybe how to prevent it from occurring in the future. I don't know. You gotta teach children these things. So right now you're not teaching them that. Anyways, sorry, we're going a little bit on a rabbit trail here. Where else were we? Oh, so I was talking about descriptions and why you can read the books. So, I'm not suggesting that first graders are reading Maus or Beloved, of course not. But high schoolers can most certainly read these books, and that's where a lot of these particular books are being banned. However, there are a shocking number of elementary school age books that are being banned, like Brown Bear, if I'm remembering this correctly, was banned at one time, and it's honestly just because the guy who was suggesting it, he misnamed the book or something, but it got passed and it was banned. There's a couple of books I don't know the names of them, but I can see the covers in my mind, but they're about hair. I think one of the titles is actually I Love My Hair, and the main character is like a little black girl with an afro, and that's been banned. That shit. You shouldn't be banning that, right? This is the story of a little kid who has hair that, is not a typical white girl's hair, and she needs to learn that, hey, my hair is beautiful, and I'm beautiful, and we're getting off topic again. I'm sorry. So, all of this to say, banning books is like one step away from burning books, and that's very bad. I think we can all agree on that. So it's a war on access to knowledge. That covers all of number 2. Let's go back to number 1. I'm going to start with the history of libraries in America in general, and then narrow down to the Kansas City Public Library. And I'm sorry to say, I'm going to offer the very briefest of historical overviews for this history. I would love to do a deep dive into the history of the library, but after 150 years, I know that there is a very, very rich historical narrative here. And if the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art took me 8 full-length episodes, then libraries, and, you know, we have not just the Kansas City Public Library, we have the McConnell Public Library. I'm sure that there were at least one Carnegie Library in this area at one point. You know, it would easily take me 10 to 12 to do libraries in depth, so we're not doing that. Let's begin with libraries in America date back to 1731. It's a nice long history. Ben Franklin, one of the least problematic founding fathers, and some of his buddies founded a subscription library. So everyone who subscribed is a paid member, you're paying a yearly due, and then those funds are used to buy books, and those books are given to members of the group. Skipping private libraries, the first public library funded by taxpayer money, as all public libraries are funded today, was begun in 1833 in Peterstown, Pennsylvania. And the first public library in a major city was the Boston Public Library in 1848. Yet it's thanks to industrial business tycoon and steel magnate Mr. Andrew Carnegie, who I mentioned just a moment ago, that we owe thanks to the spread of libraries across America. Honestly, if he were alive today, his wealth would be on par with Bezos and Musk. He'd be one of the ones that were like, eat the rich. And I don't know if you remember him from like 4th grade history or not, but, you know, Carnegie Steel, he had a monopoly on steel production here in America. And for the first good chunk of his life, I don't know the year that this happened, but he was not great. He was problematic. And then he had a health scare or something, and then one day he's like, okay, I'm going to be a philanthropist now. And then he turns into a guy that we like. So, yeah, he's really not treating his workers very well. And yet, at the same time, he genuinely believed that the rich had a moral obligation to use their wealth for the betterment of society. So, one of his many philanthropic efforts were the Carnegie Libraries. So, quote, Carnegie Libraries funded the building of 2,509 Carnegie Libraries worldwide between 1883 and 1929. Of those, 1,795 of them were in the United States. 1,687 were public libraries, and 108 were academic libraries, end quote. And as fabulous as that is, again, I did read that he was often criticized for the building of these libraries because, you know, he's paying for the building to be built. Fantastic. Wonderful. But he's not paying for the books. So then the citizens of the town have to buy their own books to fill this library that was built. Not an inexpensive enterprise. Okay, yeah, so I know that one of the Carnegie Libraries was in my hometown, Leavenworth, Kansas, and that building is still standing. It's now 4 apartments. It's been renovated. So, see, I knew we had one Carnegie Library somewhere in this area. And we cannot forget the Packhorse Library Project, a group of badass women employed by the WPA from 1935 to 1942 to deliver books to citizens living within the Appalachian Mountains. The WPA, that's the Public Works Project. It was a New Deal program developed by FDR, is that correct? During the Great Depression. 97% sure that was FDR. Here in Kansas City, the public library dates back to 1873 when the Kansas City Board of Education started the library and they purchased 5 volumes of the New England Encyclopedia. Alright, here's one of my favorite parts about this library history. Carrie Westlake Whitney, a woman, became the first librarian, and although she didn't have the title, she was really the acting director of the library from 1881 to 1910, and then she was given the boot thanks to misogyny, because somebody wrote in the paper that, oh, it should be a man in charge. Oh, okay, yeah, sure, we'll listen to you. Random dude in the library, in the newspaper. But what a badass babe. I so want to do a deep dive into her history. And I cannot express how sad I am that I'm not doing that at this time. But I have a friend who works at the library who has conducted extensive research on her life. And, it's been a goal to have her on the podcast. We'll see if that works out or not. But just to whet your appetite, Carrie Westlake Whitney, aka Mother of the Kansas City Library, wrote History of Kansas City, Missouri, 1808 to 1908. It's a 3-volume history of Kansas City. She started the Children's Library, and she was queer. She was married twice, first to E.W. Judson, divorced or widowed, unknown, and then to James Steele Whitney, deceased. Then she finally settled down with her life partner, Frances Bishop, another woman. After Whitney's death in 1934, Frances was the second librarian at the library, and they were together for 40 years. The first official library building was at 8th and Oak, built in 1889. Before this, the library's collection of books had been housed in various offices, which presumably belonged to the Board of Education. In 1897, I said that wrong, to the school board. In 1897, they get a new building at 9th and Locust, and the Children's Library was added. A year later, this library, which had been a subscription library, became a free public library. Kansas Cityans today know our public library is a library system, which means there are multiple branches spread across the city. And I believe in other suburbs, yes, because there is a branch in Sugar Creek, so also in suburbs. The former Allen Library in Westport became the first branch of the Kansas City Public Library in 1899. Here is a fun connection to a former topic. The Nelson Atkins Museum of Art from Series 4, Treasures of Kansas City, topic number 3, if I remember correctly. Nelson donated works of art to the library in 1901, if I'm remembering correctly, and for many years this was the Western Gallery of Art before it was renamed the Nelson Gallery of Art, and then the Nelson Gallery of Art became the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. 11 branches were added to the library in the 1910s and another 9 in the 20s and 30s, so now the library is up to 20-ish locations. Most of these are located within schools. Remember, at this time, the library still has a very close relationship with the Kansas City School Board. And in 1922, a branch opened within Lincoln High School, which is a historically black high school, and became the only library in the state of Missouri available to black students. Why? As always, the answer is racism and segregation. Did you have that on your bingo card? Well, you should have. The library also reached 1 million books within its collection in 1922, and then 2 million in 1931, so the collection is expanding rapidly. Another banned book name drop here. In 1939, the school board ordered the removal of Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. The library at the time, of course, objected to this course of action, but was overruled. 9 months later, it was allowed back to the library, but it wasn't allowed to be placed on shelves, and it wasn't available to students. Kansas City's bookmobile started in 1950. Can you believe that? 70 years of bookmobile. Y'all thought that was a modern thing. That's okay. I totes did too. I thought that bookmobile was like, 2010s. In 1960, the library moved to 12th and Oak, and the Missouri Valley Special Collections came to life. It was located on the 3rd floor of the building. The Missouri Valley Special Collections, which I did do a Patreon episode on way back when, in like early 2020. We did it virtually. It is a wonderful resource to historians who want to research Kansas City, who want to research Missouri history in general. I think they reach a little bit further, but they're really pretty focused on Missouri and Kansas City. And they have a ton of newspapers on microfilm, like tons and tons. They have collections of items from within the city. Like, I know that they have a massive collection of yearbooks. Those have all been digitized and you can see them as a PDF on their website. They have a large collection of fire department stuff. Nothing else as a collection is immediately coming to mind. I'm sure they have a ton of maps and stuff. And then they have, of course, a ton of research books. Some of them you can check out. But if they're in the Missouri Valley Special Collection specifically, those are only available on site. So if you've never been, it's a really nice little research space up on the 5th floor. I recommend you should go see it. And of course, the building is beautiful. The Plaza branch opened in 1969. 1973 was the 100th anniversary of the library. They began offering interlibrary loan in 1985. My international listeners, I don't know, do you guys have this? If you go to the library and you ask for Grapes of Wrath, but they don't have it, but the library in the next city over does have it, can your library borrow it for you? That's basically how interlibrary loan works. Like, Library A borrows from Library B and then gives the book to person A, and then person A gives it back to Library A and they give it back to Library B. It's a really neat little system. Very useful for researchers. 1988 is a big year for the library. After 150 years, they finally separate from the Kansas City School Board and become their own entity. They also opened the Lucille Bluford branch that year, which is named after Lucille Bluford, who was a journalist at the Casey Call, which is Kansas City's premier Black-owned and run newspaper. They are still in production today. I really should know this, but I want to say they started in the 20s. I feel like I'm seeing 1922, but don't quote me on that one. I think 1920s in general is closer. Anyways, the Call is a wonderful resource. We have digital copies available at the Black Archives. Oh, the library, and I'm not certain actually if this is the library or the Missouri Valley Special Collections, but they have digital copies of the Kansas City Star, which has been in production for over 100 years here in Kansas City. Available if you have a Kansas City Library card, so you can log in and then look at those on your computer. But yeah, I don't know which entity owns that. Anyways, the library catalog went fully digital in 1990. That is so early, y'all. Like, computers were kind of still new in 1990. Like, they started in the 80s, but I remember being in, like, kindergarten and first grade, and there's, like, here's how a computer works. And there were those really, really old, big, clunky computers that did nothing. And in comparison to today, they did nothing. But honestly, I do remember very clearly using a card catalog in my elementary school library. So the fact that the public library went digital in 1990 is just a bit shocking to me, but impressively shocking. They opened a few more branches in the 90s. In 2004, the library finally moved into its current location at 10th and Baltimore. This is formerly the First National Bank. The building still says First National on the outside. And when you walk inside, the architecture is so gorgeous. It is my second favorite building in Kansas City, if I've never mentioned that before. The first, of course, being Union Station. But they kept several key original architectural features when they moved in, such as the front doors. They're very heavy, but they're very ornate Art Deco doors. They're very gorgeous. the chandeliers, which had been added to the bank in 1926. Some of the teller stands, they don't have the top part, well, that kind of looks like a cage, but they have the table part, basically. And they kept the vault, the 1926 bank vault, which is now an intimate little movie theater that seats 28 people. And you can rent it out, or they have free movie showings on like Tuesday afternoons or something. They even won an award from the National Trust for Historic Preservation for their preservation/restoration work on this building. They began offering ebooks in 2005, which, again, that seems really early to me. I mean, growing up, my family, we never had the latest tech, and I was 25 before I bought my first smartphone, but I don't think I remember reading an ebook until 2012, maybe? Also, in 2005, Crosby Kemper III became the library director. He was the director until 2020, and when he left, he became the director of IMLS, that's the Institute for Museum and Library Services. For my non-Kansas City listeners, Kemper is the son of R. Crosby Kemper Jr., who lived from 1927 to 2014. He was a banker and a philanthropist. Sorry, I almost didn't say that right. The Kemper Museum of Art and the Kemper Arena are named after him. Kemper Arena, of course, is now known as the Hy-Vee Arena, but it will always be Kemper Arena to the natives. Kemper III has really followed in his father's footsteps. He was a banker for many years. He's been a philanthropist for many more. He's still alive. He's just finishing his term as director of IMLS. During his time as director of the public library, they had a program on KCPT TV called Meet the Past, where they had folks on who basically impersonated a historic figure, and they won 2 local Emmys for that in 2014. One of them, and I'll be honest, I don't know if his is from that year or from a different year, but one of the Emmys went to my boss, Dr. Karma, for her impersonation of Toni Morrison. Is that correct? I feel like I'm blanking on a lot of stuff today. I feel fairly confident. No, I don't think it's Toni, actually. It's a different Black author. It might come to me later, and then I'll let you know. The library did receive an award from IMLS in 2008. In 2013, Alvin Sykes became the first scholar in residence. So the Black Archives has his collection if you ever want to do some research on him. It's not processed yet, but we hope to get to it soon. And because we have his collection, I got to learn a bit about him several months ago. He was a pioneer in civil rights here in Kansas City. He was almost entirely self-educated. And he spent so much time at the library, basically all day, every day, that they created this position for him. He received a small stipend and he gave lectures, but it was really like, you're here doing all this research, we're going to acknowledge you. And like I said, he's basically self-educated. He started this, not firm, but like company kind of. He helped people here in Kansas City with their lawsuits. He was not a lawyer, but he was like, I understand the law enough, I can give you all this advice. And he was really good at it. Like, he got a couple of prominent Kansas City cases reopened, and then the murderer, like, correctly identified and convicted. He also helped people across all of US, not just here in Kansas City. So the most prominent and well-known case that he was a part of is actually the Emmett Till case. In 2005, he and Mamie Till Mobley, Emmett's mother, founded the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation. It was due to his efforts that Congress wrote and passed the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crime Act in 2008. The Till case was reopened in 2018. Sadly, this did not result in any convictions, partially because the 2 murderers, the 2 men, had died in the 90s. But you know what? The wife who made up the lie about, yeah, he whistled at me, she was still alive, and they could have and should have convicted her ass. She, just died in 2023. In 2019, KCPL became the first one of the first, not the first, one of the first libraries in the nation to eliminate fines. Yay! Honestly, this is really good for Laura because I have books that are sitting here on my desk that I've had since January, and I'm sorry, I just keep forgetting to return them. I'm going to very soon, I swear. So if you keep them as long as I did, they will declare them lost, and then you owe them the money, and then you can't check out any more books until you pay the money. But if you're like a week late, you don't have to pay a fine. And if I return them, then my debt is cleared. So I really need to return them. But books, the reason why no fines is just so amazing, period, is books, knowledge, resources at the library should always be free. There shouldn't be any penalties. And now if they would just offer free parking, that would be swell. They do offer validated parking for the garage, but it only covers like an hour. Unless you go up to the Missouri Valley Special Collections on the 5th floor, and they can validate your parking fully. Keep that in mind. Alright, that was 2019, so now we're up to 2020. We had the pandemic. They reopened in 2021, I believe, and now we're here in 2024. So there it is, the very brief, very fast overview of 150 years of Kansas City Public Library history. You are welcome. That's all that I have for today. Thank you for joining me as we explored this piece of Kansas City's history. Support your local libraries. Thank a librarian for being awesome. Oppose banned books. Read banned books. You will eventually be very happy that you did so if you're not in the beginning. And please listen to topics 1 and 2 of the series if you've not already done so. For sources, I never did get my hands on this book. Okay, so actually, I don't know that I mentioned this. I did not mention this in this episode, but I don't remember if I mentioned it in a previous episode of this series. Because this is the 150th anniversary year of the library, they put together a table book, one of those really big, beautiful hardback books that was, here's the history of our library. And I never did get my hands on it, so that was not one of my sources, unfortunately. My sources primarily came from the kansascitylibrary.org/timeline, but I also got a little bit from kcbackstories.com. So links, if you are interested, I'm going to link to a Google Sheet that has all of the banned books in America from 2021 to 2022. I was looking for a more recent list, but I couldn't find one, so if you do, send me a message on email or DM me. I hope you will consider becoming a financial supporter of the show. There are several ways you can do so. You can subscribe to patreon.com or redcircle.com/homegrownkc or patreon.com/homegrownkc. You can also give a one-time donation at redcircle.com/homegrownkc or coffee.com/homegrownkc. That's ko-fi.com. You can give as little or as much as you want, even as little as $1 a month. When you sign up, create an account, subscribe to the show, you'll be charged that day and then on the 1st of every month following. And actually, that's about to change. I'll explain in a minute. If you become a patron and you are giving a monthly donation, then you get 3 things. You get an item from the merchandise store valued at $5 or less. You get a shout out on every episode and social media post. So thank you, Bjorn and Joan, for your continued support. And you get access to exclusive bonus content featuring local historians, archivists, and museum curators. If you simply give a one-time donation, you'll receive a shout-out on the next available episode, but you do not get anything from the merchandise store and you do not get access to that bonus content. Additionally, if you give a donation on Ko-fi, 1% automatically goes to fight climate change, which is something I'm passionate about. Okay, so the change is starting November 2024, Apple is going to change how they interact with the Patreon app. So if you become a Patreon member and you subscribe to my show, what Apple is making them do is instead of allowing them to bill... Actually, you know what? I'm not going to be able to summarize this. Let me quote you from the email. Okay, quote. Apple is requiring that Patreon use their in-app purchasing system and remove all other billing systems from the Patreon app by November 2024. This means that starting in November, new membership purchased in the app will be subject to Apple's 30% Apple Store fee. So that means that's an additional fee for you. Let's say you sign up for $10 a month. 30% is $3. $3 is going to Apple, so you have to pay $13. If I'm understanding that correctly. If I'm not, and they're like, you pay $10, but we're automatically taking $3 off the top, that's a ripoff. Either way, it's a ripoff for you and for me. Anyways, quote, you're currently on a first of the month billing model. Okay, so that's what I was trying to say earlier. Your card is going to be charged on the first of the month, right? Quote, but Apple's in-app purchase system only supports subscription billing, end quote. So, after November, instead of getting charged on the first of the month, you are getting charged on whatever day of the month you sign up for. So if you sign up on the 10th, you're going to pay every month on the 10th, like you do for your Netflix, right? And Apple has made it clear that if creators on Patreon continue to use unsupported billing models, then they will be at risk of being removed. Patreon will be at risk of being removed from the Apple Store entirely. So, all of that's all changing. Make sense? Okay, great. If you cannot support me monetarily, totally cool, then you can still support me by following, liking, subscribing my social media pages. That's Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm Homegrown KC on all of them. Make sure you rate and review me on Apple Podcasts. All of my episodes are now available on YouTube for listen as well. You can visit my website for additional information on every topic. That's homegrownkc.wordpress.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there. That's the only place you can sign up for my newsletter. Once a month, you'll get an email that says, here's what's new and here's what's coming. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, episode suggestions, if you have that list of the most recently banned books, then you can email me at homegrownkcpodcast@gmail.com or send me a DM on one of my social media networks. For merchandise, visit zazzle.com/store/homegrown_KC_store. Thank you, as always, goes out to my talented sister-in-law, Sarah Combs, for the creation of my logo, to the Dear Misses for the use of their song Kansas City as the intro and outro music of every episode, and to local libraries, which enable me to gather all of my research. Thank you for listening. Cheers.
Had to ask you this tonight, 'cause I can't seem to shake this feeling, and I can't seem to get you off my mind. Thought I lost my nerve